Jai Hind everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel which is Explore Yourselves, Banking and General Knowledge etc. Jai Hind. Historical events of 7th April. A journey through time of 7th April 2025 Monday. Today is that is 7th April highlight in history. 1724. Premiere performance of Bach's St. John's Passion BWV 245 at St. Nicholas Church, Leipzig. 1767. End of Burmese Siamese War 1765 to 1767. 1788. Settlers establish Marietta, Ohio, the first permanent settlement created by US citizens in the recently organized Northwest Territory. 1790. Greek War of Independence. Greek revolutionary Lambros Katsonis loses three of his ships in the Battle of Andros. 1795. The French First Republic adopts the kilogram and gram as its primary unit of mass. 1798. The Mississippi Territory is organized from disputed territory claimed by both the United States and the Spanish Empire. It is expanded in 1804 and again in 1812. 1805. Lewis and Clark expedition. The Corps of Discovery breaks camp among the Mandan tribe and resumes its journey west along the Missouri River. 1805. German composer Ludwig van Beethoven premieres his Third Symphony at the Theater an der Wien in Vienna. 1824. The Mechanics Institution is established in Manchester, England at the Bridgewater Arms Hotel as part of a national movement for the education of working men. The institute is the precursor to three universities in the city: the University of Manchester (UMIST) and the Metropolitan University of Manchester (MMU). 1831. Pedro II becomes Emperor of Empire of Brazil. 1862. American Civil War. The Union's Army of the Tennessee and the Army of the Ohio defeat the Confederate Army of Mississippi near Shiloh, Tennessee. 1968. Thomas D. Archie McGee, one of the Canadian Fathers of Confederation, is assassinated by a Fenian activist. 1906. Mount Vesuvius erupts and devastates Naples. 1906. The Algeciras Conference gives France and Spain control over Morocco. 1922. Teapot Dome Scandal. United States Secretary of the Interior Albert B. Fall leases federal petroleum reservoirs to private oil companies on excessively generous terms. 1926. Violet Gibson attempts to assassinate Italian Prime Minister Benito Mussolini. 1927. AT&T engineer Herbert Ives transmits the first long-distance public television broadcast from Washington, D.C. to New York City, displaying the image of Commerce Secretary Herbert Hoover. 1933. Prohibition in the United States is repeated the beer of no more than 3% to 2% alcohol by weight 8 months before the ratification of the 21st Amendment to the United States Constitution, now celebrated as National Beer Day in the United States. 1933. Nazi Germany issues the law for the restoration of the professional civil service, banning Jews and political dissidents from civil service posts. 1939. Benito Mussolini declares an Italian protectorate over Albania and forces King George I into exile. 1940. Booker T. Washington becomes the first African American to be depicted on a United States postage stamp. 1943. The Holocaust in Ukraine. In Terabovila, Germans ordered 1,100 Jews to undress and march through the city to the nearby village of Plebanivka, where they are shot and buried in ditches. 1943, Ioannis Rallis becomes collaborationist Prime Minister of Greece during the Axis occupation. 1943, the National Football League makes helmets mandatory. 1944, in the Fragato massacre, soldiers belonging to the German 356th Infantry Division killed 30 Italian civilians and 15 partisans near Casteldelci in central northern Italy. 1945, World War II. The Imperial Japanese Navy battleship Yamato, one of the two largest ever constructed, is sunk by United States Navy aircraft during Operation Tengo. 1946, the Soviet Union annexes East Prussia as the Kaliningrad Oblast of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. 1948, the World Health Organization established by the United Nations. 1954, United States President Dwight D. Eisenhower gives his domino theory speech during a news conference. 1955, Winston Churchill resigns as Prime Minister of United Kingdom amid indications of failing health. 1956, Francoist Spain agrees to surrender its protectorate in Morocco. 1964, IBM announces the System 360. 1965, representatives of the National Congress of American Indians testify before members of the US Senate in Washington, D.C. against the termination of the Colville tribe. 1968, two-time Formula One British world champion Jim Clark dies in an accident during a Formula 2 race in Hockenheim. 1969, the Internet Symbolic Birth Date publication of RFC1. 1971, Vietnam War. President Richard Nixon announces his decision to quicken the pace of Vietnamization. 1972, Vietnam War. Communist forces overrun the South Vietnamese town of Loc Ninh. 1976, Member of Parliament and suspected spy John Stonehouse resigns from the Labour Party after being arrested for faking his own death. 1977, German federal prosecutor Siegfried Buback and his driver are shot by two Red Army faction members while waiting at the red light. 1978, development of the neutron bomb is cancelled by President Jimmy Carter. 1980, during the Iran hostage crisis, the United States severs relations with Iran. 1982, Iranian Foreign Affairs Minister Sadegh Ghoribzadeh is arrested. 1983, during STS-6, astronauts Story Musgrave and Don Peterson performed the first space shuttle spacewalk. 1988, Soviet Defense Minister Dmitry Yazov orders the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan. 1989, Soviet submarine Komsomolets sinks in the Barents Sea off the coast of Norway, killing 42 sailors. 1990, a fire breaks out on the passenger ferry Scandinavian Star, killing 159 people. 1990, John Poindexter is convicted for his role in the Iran-Contra affair. In 1991, the convictions are reversed on appeal. 1994, Rwandan genocide. Massacres of Tutsis begin in Kigali, Rwanda, and soldiers kill the civilian prime minister Agate Iwillingly Mana. 1994, Hoover and Calloway attempts to destroy Federal Express Flight 705 in order to allow his family to benefit from his life insurance policy. 1995, First Chechen War, Russian paramilitary troops begin a massacre of civilians in Samarsky, Chechnya. 1999, Turkish Airlines Flight 5904 crashes near Ceyhan in southern Turkey, killing 6 people. 2001, NASA launches the 2001 Mars Odyssey orbiter. 2003, Iraq War, US troops capture Baghdad, Saddam Hussein's Ba'athist regime falls 2 days later. 2003, Haitian President Jean-Bertrand Aristide demands reparations of $21 million from France for the Haiti independence debt. 2009, former Peruvian President Alberto Fujimori is sentenced to 25 years in prison for ordering killings and kidnappings by security forces. 2009, mass protests begin across Moldova under the belief that results from the parliamentary elections are fraudulent. 2011, the Israel Defense Forces used their Iron Dome missile system to successfully intercept a BM-21 Grad launched from Gaza, marking the first short-range missile intercept ever. 2017, a man deliberately drives a hijacked truck into a crowd of people in Stockholm, Sweden, killing 5 people and injuring 15 others. 2017, US President Donald Trump orders the 2017 Sayeret missile strike against Syria in retaliation for the Khan Shaykhun chemical attack. 2018, former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is arrested for corruption by determination of Judge Sergio Moro from the car wash operation. Lula stayed in prison for 580 days after being released by the Brazilian Supreme Court. 2018, Syria launches the Douma chemical attack during the Eastern Ghouta offensive of the Syrian civil war. 2020, COVID-19 pandemic. China ends its lockdown in Wuhan. 2020, COVID-19 pandemic. Acting Secretary of the Navy Thomas Modly resigns for his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic in USS Theodore Roosevelt and the dismissal of Brett Crozier. 2021, COVID-19 pandemic. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announces that the SARS-CoV-2 alpha variant has become the dominant strain of COVID-19 in the United States. 2022, Ketanji Brown Jackson is confirmed for the Supreme Court of the United States, becoming the first black female justice. Thank you very much for your patience. Request for like, share and subscribe.